And
Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matano, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
welcome to episode number 276 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 86 from March the 10th, 2004. My name is Aria, and joining me as always is the Scott D'Amore to my Antonio Pena. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell are you doing today?
Am I still in a relationship with Giselle Shaw?
I was unaware that Scott D'Amore was in a relationship with Giselle Shaw.
Yeah, he was.
Good for them.
Yep. But yeah, anyway, got me flustered for a second. But we did have a Giselle Shaw sighting recently.
Did we?
Yeah, unfortunately she's with the NWA.
Well, since you're approximately the only person who ever watches the NWA, we'll just, assume that she's gone nowhere since leaving TNA.
She had an NWA women's title match against Natalia Markova, and the NWA could be great. We just got to get Billy Corgan away from there.
Sure, we'll go with that the NWA could be great. So speaking of things that could be great, we're talking about the America's X Cup tonight. America's X Cup 2, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
It is Mexico versus Canada. And this was not as good as the first one. We'll say
Nope.
that. And if Cindy would talk, I'm sure she would agree with me.
I did agree with you. I said no.
Maybe speak louder because it wasn't picked up on the microphone.
Maybe I should move my microphone then.
That would work too.
Let me just get in here. I was taking care of a couple of things as well. That's not to say that this was a bad show. Far from it, actually.
Not at all. But, I mean, the first one a month ago was pretty damn good. This one was pretty good.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that, much like how the first time we couldn't just have the show, we had to have Jeff Jarrett in 10 million segments. This one, we couldn't just have Mexico versus Canada. We had to have Mexico versus Canada and the Insane Clown Posse in a 6-man tag team match in the main event.
Something good comes out of that main event, though.
The return of main event Glenn Gilbertti, of course. First time in a year that we've seen Glenn Gilbertti in the main events of these shows.
We'll talk more about that when we get to the show.
Well, we're about to start the show now.
Well, we're not starting it yet because you have to read some stuff.
Do I have to?
It's part of your gimmick to read some stuff.
Oh, I read a lot of stuff. I read about 20,000 words on these shows. I usually read all of them. But let's tell you what else is happening in the world of TNA outside of the 2 hours that this show aired on Wednesday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. With this week in TNA news. And the big news was that Dixie Carter was at a recent marketing conference in Los Angeles and introduced TNA's newest slogan, Wrestling Reinvented. I am sure that will last almost as long as their 2011 slogan, Wrestling Matters. Now, this is part of their effort to make a deal with Fox Sports Net for a weekly TV show because Fox Sports Net insists on a clean product. Now, Cindy, we're going to talk about the Insane Clown Posse tonight in the main event. The Insane Clown Posse quit TNA this week, completing the clean sweep of quitting each of the four major companies in the U.S. over the last 5 years, having quit the WWF, WCW, ECW, and now TNA. The difference is that while they don't mean anything for pay-per-view buys, obviously, as we've seen, their fans will show up and watch the shows for free. In other news, TNA has lost absolutely nothing. And speaking of things that TNA has lost absolutely nothing in, the people who were the money behind Randy Savage's rap CD are interested in buying the company. It is expected that if Pand Energy does not sell to them, that Pand Energy would respond by investing further into TNA.
Well, we know how well that worked out.
Well, I mean, they own the damn company for the next 12 years, so I would, say that worked out pretty well-ish.
Yeah, well-ish is probably the right term. I think until we get to Bound for Glory 2013.
I don't know who this we are that I get to Bound for Glory 2013. You can get to Bound for Glory 2013.
I mean, in general, not show-wise. We're not... Look, I do not want to sit through Main Event Mafia TNA again. I definitely don't want to sit through Immortal TNA again.
If we're still doing this in 9 years, somebody shoot us.
Well, I plan on doing something else with my time.
I got 15 women running around on me. IRS up my rear end, son. I got all kinds of problems, but I'm going to guarantee you, son, I ain't going to do the Von Erich thing. You know what I'm talking? No, I'm not. But
thank you, Robert Fuller. So
well, we know why he's got 15 women running around on him.
Why is that?
The obvious.
Tell us.
You could do pull-ups on his penis. That's why.
Why would I want to do that?
Just start the show.
They started this week's TNA show by running down the format of the America's X Cup, which was nice. It would have been great had they told us this last week, because yes, this is the same rules as the first America's X Cup, but not everyone watched that show. And speaking of which, in case you forgot or don't want to go back and listen to the show from a month ago, and why wouldn't you want to go back and listen to us talk about the show a month ago? But anyway, each of the 4 singles matches are worth 1 point each. The 2 tag team matches are worth 2 points each. And then in the main event, 8-man elimination match, every elimination is worth 2 points each. So there are a lot of points at stake here.
And, 16 in total.
Yes, man, oh man, Maddie. That's a lot of points. So we go to the opener, which is Teddy Hart with Scott D'Amore representing Team Canada versus Mr. Aguila representing Team Mexico. Now, this is the type of show that Mike Tenay is at his best at. Give him the chance to break out all of his amazing historical knowledge, and you'll see why it was a big deal to Jerry Jarrett to bring him in as the commentator on this show. Now, this is the match that I mentioned 2 weeks ago that Teddy came out of faking a knee injury to get out of wrestling on the live show. Now, they started slow here, which was honestly for the best. We're going to see these guys 3 times tonight. And even though all the singles matches were taped on February 25th, while the tag matches, including the 8-man, were taped on March 3rd, it's supposed to be one fluid show, so they obviously need to save stuff for later on in the show. D'Amore interfered a bunch of times, grabbing Aguila's leg. It didn't work the first time or the second time, but the third time he grabbed Aguila's leg, Teddy was able to do a step up enziguri to Aguila, and this is when he began selling his knee. Despite that, he broke out a double springboard moonsault and a springboard hurricane rana that took Aguila to the floor. Seeing how great Teddy can be really shows off how much he screwed himself over with his attitude.
Oh
The
yeah.
finish saw D'Amore trip Aguila again. Teddy used the tornado DDT and a shooting star press elbow drop called Heart Attack number 2 for the win. Note to Teddy, if you're going to pretend to have a serious knee injury, don't do 3 or 4 springboard moves after. Winner Teddy Hart. Canada leads 1-0. I gave this match, ow, I just bit my tongue. I gave this match a 5.5 out of 10.
You okay?
I'm fabulous. Go on.
I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I actually enjoyed this match a little bit more than you did. But yeah, knowing all of the crap that Teddy Hart did, we could run down a list of companies that he's run himself out of. Ring of Honor, TNA, WWE twice.
Maybe he's in a contest with the Insane Clown Posse so you can get cut from the most companies.
No, I'm trying to think of people who napalm so many bridges.
At the end of the,
So I think it's in a race between him and Keith Olbermann.
well, the whole thing with Scott D'Amore was weird on this too because he comes out for this match and he's around for the main event, but he doesn't really get involved in the main event, which is like, what the hell was the point? Because I figured, like, especially when he's interfering half a dozen times in the first match, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is going to be one of those shows where we're going to have Scott D'Amore 500 times on the show. But this was one time and one time only for Scott D'Amore, which was kind of weird because you think they would even use a throwaway line that he was then banned from ringside the rest of the show or something, but they didn't even do that.
I think
And
they had Scott D'Amore out there because he's the captain, and he wanted to
well,
pay respect to the captain, so to speak.
where's Antonio Pena? You know, he's the
Well,
captain
they
of his
mentioned that
team.
he's
Is on
in
the
Mexico
next
City
match.
taking care of business.
Yeah. Well, I was so disappointed in Scott D'Amore that I almost channeled my inner Jim Ross.
Sound like a proud Canadian athlete? Why, hell, he's a Canadian hero. He shouldn't fight like that. He's in his home country.
Except almost none of that describes Scott D'Amore, including the part about fighting in his home country, because they were, in fact, in Nashville, which is not to be confused with anywhere in Canada.
I don't know. Some parts
So-
of Alberta can count as Nashville.
Armando Quintero is now with the rest of Team Mexico. Juventud cuts a promo in Spanish that Armando translated, which of course was even weirder when Juvi began speaking English a second later. They all said the America's X Cup was going back to Mexico, and there was some really poor editing here. I don't know what Armando had said, but like they cut him off mid-sentence and went to the entrance for the next match. Just some really poor editing. And you think, like, was that bad? They could just ask him to retake it. The show is not live.
Yeah, this show was probably edited within an inch of its life.
Which is like,
because this happened. Because the abrupt cuts happened twice. Well, that happened more often than they normally do for a tape show. But yeah, it was just weird, and I was like, huh?
But it's not like they didn't have time. Like these shows, like the live shows usually go like an hour 52, hour 54 minutes. This show went about an hour 48. So if they wanted to, they could have, added some meat to the bones here and, give us that last 10 seconds or whatever the hell he said. And believe me, if like he'd gone completely off the rails, it would not have been the worst promo we've ever heard on this show.
No, not even close.
So we then get Petey Williams representing Team Canada versus Juventud Guerrera representing Team Mexico. Juvi is the captain of Team Mexico, and thanks to Teddy pretending to be hurt, Petey beat him 2 weeks ago. And then this really isn't important now, but will become important later on. They mentioned for the first but not last time that Petey graduated from the same wrestling training school class as Chris Sabin. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, Border City Wrestling Training School.
Juvi went for the 619 because thanks to Rey Mysterio, every Hispanic wrestler seemed to try that at least once, but Petey rolled out of the ring. Outside the ring, Petey went for Hurricane Rana, but Juvi blocked it and swung him into the steps. And at this point, in addition to the poor editing from earlier, I noticed we had issues with audio mixing because that wasn't heard at all. There was no noise when Petey got swung into the steps, and there was no noise seconds later when Petey gave Juvi a drop toe hold into the same steps. Now, the in-ring audio was just fine because they have the microphones under the mat to pick it up, but they really cranked up the fake crowd noise to where you could not hear things otherwise. Juvi did a sharpshooter for what I can almost guarantee is the first time he has ever done that, at least on American television, and was obviously done as a wink and nod to the fact that Bret Hart is the most famous Canadian wrestler ever.
Mm-hmm.
We had a nice series of roll-ups with both getting a bunch of 2 counts, which culminated in a Juvi low drop kick, and Juvi won with the Juvi driver, tying this at 1. I give this a 5.0 out of 10.
I really like this match. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I really like the action. There was some good back and forth. I really didn't pay too attention to the audio, but I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Scott Hudson was now with Team Canada, where they debated on what to do now that Teddy is hurt. Demore yelled at Johnny Devine to go get their lead back, and Teddy yelled at the trainer to tape his knee up. Anything
He
you
says he
wish
ain't
to add
quitting.
to this?
He said he ain't quitting. You will after the show. Well, actually, not by your own will.
See that? Well, that's not quitting. That's just him not ever being booked again. Actually, that's not even true. He gets booked in 2017, 2018, when they did that Impact versus Lucha Underground show. He was on that.
Really?
I am 99% sure that he was on that show. Why do I remember him and Scott Steiner as a team? That had to have happened. I have too vivid of a memory of Scott Steiner and Teddy Hart being a team for Scott Steiner and Teddy Hart to have not been a team. Let's see. I may have gone crazy, but you know.
LW Fusion. He did there was a house, an HOH show, which was partnered with Impact that does not count.
It counts if I say it counts.
It wasn't on TV, so it does not count.
Scott Steiner and Teddy Hart defeated OVE, Impact Wrestling versus Lucha Underground, April 6th, 2018. Knew I wasn't crazy.
2018, what show?
Impact Wrestling versus Lucha Underground.
And what was the date?
April 6th, 2018.
Online stream at Sugar Mill in New Orleans, Louisiana.
It was a WrestleCon show. It was an Impact Wrestling show. It counts.
Trying to remember if this is the show where
Asshole El Patron no-showed, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Um, Johnny Devine representing Team Canada versus Abismo Negro representing Team Mexico. Now, I had a coworker way back when named John, and one day, for some reason, we were watching Impact at work when it used to air at 3 o'clock on Fox Sports Net. Anyway, Johnny Devine, for some reason, was on the show, and my coworker John really liked the name Johnny Devine, even if I doubt he ever watched wrestling ever again. So, John, this review is for you. There was a lot of really good chain wrestling early on with them working out of a Greco-Roman knuckle lock. They noted Devine was trained by Alan Coage, aka Bad News Alan / Bad News Brown. And all that really tells me is don't fuck with Johnny Devine.
Nope.
Negro used a top rope crossbody for 2, but Devine rolled it over for a 2 of his own. Devine flung Negro out of the ring and went for a baseball slide drop kick, but Negro dove back into the ring and dove right back out of it with a suicide dive. Back in the ring, Devine dove backwards from the middle rope into a Hurricane Rana for the pin. So far, this is the least spectacular match of the 3, and it did have its moments, but it was the weakest of the 3. Canada leads 2-1. I gave the match a 4.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 6 out of 10. I thought it was good, but I thought it was elevated by a pretty cool finish.
Glenn Gilbertti was now trying to cure David Young of his fear of clowns. Kid Kash walked in and yelled at him that they're outnumbered 1,000-2, so he needs to get David Young off of his back and go. Say what you want, this ended up working because David Young had no issue being in the ring with the clowns.
Nope. Especially when he had weapons abound, and let's face it, David Young can really swing a garbage can lid or a chair or whatever the hell he had in the match. We'll talk about more about that later. I did find it hilarious. Did you notice the questions that Gilbertti was asking David Young?
I can't say they were noteworthy.
The doink one I thought was funny. Hell no, I hated him.
Yes. Glenn Gilbertti did bring up Doink here on TNA. Because again, everything in the other promotion is the cool stuff. Why didn't he ask him about that clown that we had on last week's show?
ICP? They're feuding.
No, the other one. Team Japan.
They were clowns?
Yes.
Well, they wrestled like clowns.
There was a guy in a clown outfit last week.
I put that match out of my mind because it was so boring.
Jack Evans representing Team Canada for some reason versus Hector Garza representing Team Mexico.
I want to say this about the what Jack Evans hailed from. They hailed him from Vancouver, British Columbia. I understand it because it's the sister city to Seattle, but there's a big problem with that. He's from Parkland, Washington, which is a suburb of Tacoma. Wouldn't it make sense if he hailed from like some suburb from Victoria or some other lesser known but even more lesser city? Anyway, it's that thing that bothered me. I mean, you had Eric Young. He's wrestled for TNA. He's Canadian. He's billed from Canada. You could have put him on the team instead of Jack Evans. But I understand why Jack Evans was on the team. Because
why is that?
He does all the flippy stuff that Teddy Hart does, but he doesn't have the ego.
And he's about 1/10 as talented as Teddy Hart. And that is being generous at this point. And for those who recognize the name and are thinking, hey, is that the same? The answer is yes. that is in fact the same Jack Evans who in 15 years the team has had with Angelico in AEW as the Hybrid 2. He is not Canadian. The Canadian connection comes because he was in the 1999 revival of Stampede Wrestling and later the Matt Rats company that Eric Bischoff tried to get behind after WCW died in 2001. Tenay more or less brought that up and actually mentioned that Brian Alvarez helped train him before he moved to Calgary. And Brian is notably not living in Canada.
No, he's living in Washington State. I think he lives in Seattle.
Lives in Bothell, Washington.
Bothell, wonderful suburb of Seattle.
Sure, why not? So Evans got the early advantage on Garza and got cocky about it. So Garza lured him in and hit a nice-looking drop kick and a running shoulder block that turned Evans' ass over tea kettle. Evans' first big acrobatic move was when Garza was laying on the pretty black mats outside, and Evans came off the apron with a 450 splash. In the ring, Garza missed a corkscrew moonsault, and Evans more or less did a version of it while standing on the mat, but Garza got his hand on the ropes, and then Garza won with a standard moonsault to tie the score. These matches are getting a little worse each time. Let's see how the tag matches go. But we're tied at 2 after the first round, and Hector Garza wins, rating 4.0 out of 10.
Gave it a 5 out of 10. I still thought it was good, but not as good as the rest of them.
You are being way too generous. I don't know. What is it about these shows? All these X Cup shows, the first round is always meh. And then it's like once you get to the second round, that's when business starts picking up. But yeah, Jack Evans, we'll get to it later because there was a very wonky spot. Well, actually, he's not even in the wonky spot in the show. But Jack Evans is very indie-rific still. And, he may have the years of experience. He doesn't have the actual match experience that these Mexican wrestlers have. It's like, honestly, like it's almost embarrassing just the difference in talent between the Mexican wrestlers and the Canadian wrestlers. Like we said, Teddy's got a lot of talent, but he's a dipshit. Petey, we'll see a lot more of him, and he, is pretty good in the ring. But it's like Jack Evans and the other one, Johnny Devine. It's like they're very, very meh, especially at this point. And it's like that they had to do they had to use somebody, and I get that they couldn't bring in Japan yet. They had to do all the let's talk about the visas and all that shit. And yeah, it could have been a lot better, we'll say. I don't know. Honestly, again, not terribly familiar with my Canadian indies, so I don't know who they could have brought in. But yeah. But Jack Evans especially, like he was in an A shirt and baggy pants. It's like it looked very indie.
He even had that gear in Ring of Honor a few years after this.
It doesn't make it less indie. That's still like I just got done watching Ring of Honor the Night of the Racket show in 2003, the first Cornette show, and it's like Special K is like the dumbest gimmick ever, but they dress that way because they're all clubbing and ravers and all that shit, so it kind of makes sense. Why is Jack Evans on national television wearing an A shirt and baggy pants?
Well, he's also a break dancer.
Tell us that.
He's a break dancer.
That is the thing I'm always going to say anytime you bring up stuff that, we should know this because of this. It's like, tell us that on TV. When did Mike Tenay say that? When did Don West say that? Unless they say it or fucking Jack Evans said it, then get some fucking gear, dude. Get some fucking gear.
Well, I saw him breakdance in high school. I was a freshman. He was a senior.
Get some gear, dude. Get some gear. Scott Hudson was now with America's Most Wanted. This was Chris Harris's go-home promo for his world title match next week, and it started all right, and then it became the best Chris Harris promo ever. He fired up, talking about how he's been ready for this for 10 years, and, he hopes Jeff Jarrett's taking him seriously because he's ready no matter what anybody else says. And if there was an actual thing as a money promo in TNA, this was pretty damn close to it. And if anyone watched this show, this promo may have convinced them to buy next week's show just to see the title match. This was the best thing Chris Harris has done since the start of this singles push. And if I wish I would have just left it here, but Chris Harris is going for the world title next week.
Yeah, it was a fantastic promo. James Storm did his part. I didn't know Chris Harris had been in the business 10 years before this point. I thought him and James Storm were roughly the same age. I guess not.
I mean, they could be the same age,
Just James Storm started later?
Exactly. We get a pre-tape promo from after last week's show where Mike Tenay talked to Vince Russo about the Chris Harris Jeff Jarrett match. Russo said he was trying to save Chris Harris.
Before you get to that, did you see that graphic?
We'll get to that in a minute. We have time to talk about the dumb graphic. But this was unnecessary, this whole Vince Russo thing. And I get the whole point is to get him over as the top babyface in the company. This more or less took away the whole point of the last promo. Like, why the hell is this match? Like, why the hell do we keep getting beaten to our head that Chris Harris isn't ready to wrestle Jeff Jarrett? Because guess what? Jeff Jarrett wins. Spoiler alert for next week. Chris Harris loses. And the reason why you do shit like this where, person A isn't ready is because person A wins. Person A does not win next week. So this is another dumbass angle. And it's cutting down what's already happened. Cut down the good shit that we just saw. And again, this is a taped show. They did not have to air this. They could have stuck it on Explosion and, I could continue to pretend it never happened because it happened on Explosion.
Well, too bad. The better way to go about this was to flip the two segments. So you have...
The better way would have been not to do it.
Well, sometimes you have to do it.
Why did they have to do this?
Because Vince Russo is the greatest person that ever lived, that's why.
I'm going to throw something at somebody.
I was being facetious if you couldn't tell from my tone.
I'm going to throw something at somebody.
What's keeping him? Gee, I hope something horrible happened to him.
Well, he's a JCW, so that's good enough.
Watched by you. All right. Tell us about this stupid graphic that drove you up a wall. Or don't tell us about the stupid graphic that drove you up the wall.
Me. I'm getting
at some point
it.
You should tell us about the graphic.
I'm getting to it. So this graphic is supposed to highlight what's going on with the score of the X Cup, and the way that the 2 is placed, it looks like it's Team Mexico squared versus Team Canada squared. And then you have on the team side, you have the team on one side of above Canada, and then the other graphic, which should be similar, is now in the middle and everything isn't aligned properly. The spacing looks bad. I am fucking furious at this gimmick. If Borash, who supposedly made these graphics, because this was a pre-taped show, as you like to harp on, he could have easily fixed these graphics. It shouldn't have. It could have taken. You could take only 5 minutes to fix these graphics for a show that he has probably been working on for the past 2 weeks. I have to edit legal documents to make sure they're aligned properly so that they don't get rejected by courts or our customers. So when I see something like that, that is so wrong, I get furious.
All right, then. Teddy Hart and Jack Evans representing Team Canada versus Abismo Negro and Juventud Guerrera representing Team Mexico. Now, they noted a few times that Teddy and Evans wrestle on Canadian Indies as the Next Generation Hart Foundation. Now, like in the first America's X Cup, I like that they mix and match the wrestlers for the tag matches. So the 2 Canadians took on the 2 Mexicans. They did not wrestle in the first round. Now, remember that annoying red light from last week that I ranted and raved about? It was not just a live show thing. That annoying red light was here as well.
Yeah, I think we have the reason why it got so annoying, and we'll find out more in the main event.
Eddie's knee, while not magically completely healed, for a guy that was almost pulled from the show in storyline, his knee was holding up pretty well here. And the first few minutes of this match with him and Hoobie were the best part of the show so far. Negro was great, and even Evans had a better performance when he tagged in. At one point, Evans was tied to the Tree of Woe, and Team Mexico tripped Teddy before pulling him crotch first into Evans' head, which, if nothing else, was a very unique spot. We had an in-ring dive sequence culminated in Evans doing a springboard dropkick almost all the way across the ring to Negro, and then Evans broke out a corkscrew 630 to Negro. The finish saw Hoobie tap out Teddy with what was called the Hoobie lock, which was Eddie Guerrero's lasso from El Paso that he briefly did. So Hoobie's just stealing everyone's moves on this show. This was the first great show of the show. Abismo Negro and Juventud Guerrera win. Mexico leads 4-2, and the rating 8.0 out of 10.
What did you give it?
8.0 out of 10.
8.0, I gave it a 7.0. I didn't like as much as you did, but I still really enjoyed myself. I did like the crotch spot, and I liked the strategery of Teddy Hart knowing that he's still a little gimpy, or gimpy to not to sell it. Just rank on the just quickly tap out to the lasso from El Paso. Or what did he call them? What was the area code that was used?
Whatever Mexico City's area code is, 5565, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. By the way, it turns out this was the highest rated match of the show for me. So there we go.
Oh wow.
Scott Hudson was now with the Insane Clown Posse. How has Scott Hudson was now with not become predictive text in my Word documents? Well, I guess Word doesn't do predictive text. Violent J said we are mere moments from absolute catastrophe, and Juggalos are lined up from here to Memphis to see what they do best. And this is where it became noted that the 3 people who will wrestle in this match are Violent J, Shaggy 2 Dope, and 2 Tough Tony. Because again, keep in mind, there's 4 of them and 3 heels. Because nothing says TNA like how we have to always have the baby faces outnumber the heels and get their asses kicked. That is not an upcoming spoiler. That's a note that David Young beat them up in a fair fight multiple times, including in an unfair fight. You're telling me there's not a fourth, bottom card heel? Where were the fucking naturals? They could have come on. One of them could have come in and made the fourth guy in this match.
They shouldn't have fired Northcutt could have stuck around for this feud. But I forgot that he hates King Kash.
It was what the world needed now was more Kevin Northcutt. What the world needs now is Northcutt, Kevin Northcutt. It's the only thing that keeps the red shirts alive.
Yeah, strange to think that he was the best worker of the red shirts. Lord.
Petey Williams and Johnny Devine representing Team Canada versus Hector Garza and Mr. Aguila representing Team Mexico. Now, Team Mexico apparently thought they were on a Ring of Honor show because they tried to show respect at the start of the match, so the Canadians spat at them, and it was on. Garza gave Aguila the pop-up in the corner so Aguila could give Devine a Hurricane Rana. Garza went for another handshake, and Williams, thinking, how dumb is this guy, yelled at the crowd. However, Garza is more experienced and thus smarter than Petey, so he gave Petey a leg kick. Petey debuted the slingshot out of the ring into a Hurricane Rana on the floor that became one of his trademark spots. At this point, it became more of a traditional tag match than we've seen so far. Actually, it's probably the most traditional tag match we've seen of any of the X Cup matches that we've had. They got the heat on Aguila, and that's actually for the best because Petey and Devine are not crazy high flyers that everyone else is. I had to laugh because for the second time in a couple of weeks, Petey teased the Canadian Destroyer, but because he's never done it on this show, nobody had any idea what the hell he was doing. Because he did the fishing motion where he's trying to reel the guy in for the Canadian Destroyer that he does. And again, he has never done that on this show. And we'll get to it later. The show ends and he still doesn't do the move. So, he right now is fishing for people and no one knows why. The only way you know that that's what he's doing is if you're watching this show decades later and having watched Petey Williams give 10 million people a Canadian Destroyer. And I have a rant about how no one ever kicked out a Petey Williams Canadian Destroyer, but that's a rant for, plenty of time to do that rant later on.
You have a few weeks.
Yeah. Garza got the hot tag and a four-way broke out. The finish saw Petey pin Garza after Devine did a moonsault more than halfway across the ring. Now that was impressive because I'll be honest, Devine is Garza is past the midway point of the ring and Devine's going up top and I'm like, oh, fuck, Garza's going to get kneed right in the face, isn't he? But nope, Devine hit it perfectly. And points to Devine for getting some mad hops on that moonsault there. And Petey, by the way, for putting Garza in the right spot. So going into the finals, we are tied 4-4. I gave this match a 6.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I think these are the four best workers in the tournament. Like, we know of S.A. Rios.
Hoovie's the best out of all of them, but that's, a discussion for another day.
Right.
Speaking of people that screwed up their own career,
Yeah.
But
I wonder, is there
any
Mexican company? Well, I said because we have four people who are pretty talented. Mr. Aguila, aka S.A. Rios, Hector Garza, who's wrestled a lot. And even though Hoovie's the team captain, Hector Garza's essentially the MVP.
Yeah, the Canadians have two future X Division champions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if Hector Garza wrestled more in TNA, I'm pretty sure he would have been next division champion as well.
Well, if TNA would have done his immigration paperwork instead of just telling him like they do everybody else crossing the border, just say they're coming as a tourist. I
Yeah,
get
it's pretty bad.
I get they were trying to save on money, and that's what ECW did with Super Crazy at one point until Super Crazy got caught up at the border too.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this was 20 plus years ago, but ask Nicole Matthews what happens when you don't have your immigration paperwork and when you're coming to work in this country, you know.
Or Speedball Mike Bailey.
But yeah, here we are. And say that's the end of the second round, so it all comes down to our finals. And there is a Simpsons quote for everything.
This match will determine once and for all which nation is the greatest on earth, Mexico or Portugal.
Too bad the Portuguese wrestling scene just is not there, so we can't, have Team Mexico versus Team Portugal, America's X Cup coming up.
But that Madagar pro wrestling scene is on fire. I mean, give it a couple of years. I'm pretty sure they'll help light some fire in some giant in TNA.
The what pro wrestling scene is on fire?
Madagascar.
Isn't that the wrestling where they didn't have a ring and so they're wrestling in the mud at one point?
No, it's the two-sided ring that Alex Shelley referenced when they were trying to get Kevin Nash to do X Division matches.
Alrighty. We're only 2 years away from that.
2006 TNA, I absolutely adore.
Oh boy, we're going to be doing this show for 20 more years, aren't we?
No.
When we get to Eric Young stealing Chris Menendez's leg, or what was his name, Chris Melendez?
Yeah, Melendez.
Yeah, he stole the guy's leg and put it up on his mantle at home and cut a promo. When we get to that point, I think it's time to tap out.
No, we're tapping out long before. We're tapping out at the end of the pay-per-view run as we originally intended.
I don't know. You're the one that keeps wanting us to do Impact. Well,
only until the end of the weekly pay-per-view run.
We'll see how well that one goes. Scott Hudson was now with Scott D'Amore in Team Canada. D'Amore said, "What we've seen so far is what we will see all night." Is Scott D'Amore aware that we're currently tied? Is he trying to say that what we're going to see the rest of the night is a tie?
God, I hope not. Well, we can't tie.
You could have a double pin when you get. You could have a double pin when you get to the finish, and then just a series of time limit draws and double pins and expiration of time matches. I did laugh here because they let Jack Evans say a few words. They let Petey Williams say a few words. They let Johnny Devine say a few words. And then Hudson goes to ask Teddy Hart a question, and D'Amore just cuts him off and doesn't let Teddy talk. And D'Amore starts talking with an obviously fake French-Canadian accent to hype the team up. And we better get used to Scott D'Amore because he is going to be a regular part of this show for quite a while.
Also, Scott Hudson played dumb, where Scott D'Amore was speaking some Quebecois, and Scott pretty much cursed at him in French, or called him a dumbass in French. Scott Hudson is there befuddled when the team leader says, "But I don't speak Canadian."
See, it's funny because it's like when people say they don't speak American.
Exactly. And it's weird because it came from Scott Hudson.
Teddy Hart, Petey Williams, Johnny Devine, and Jack Evans with Scott D'Amore representing Team Canada versus Juventud Guerrera, Hector Garza, Mr. Aguila, and Abismo Negro representing Team Mexico in an 8-man elimination tag team match. Now, I know that in real life, approximately 2.5 hours have passed since that second tag match, but in reality, this should have gone last, even if in real life the ICP match did. Since the score is tied, there's no chance of a tie, and whoever is standing tall at the end wins the America's X Cup for the team. And then D'Amore joined the broadcast table for the match. Now, I do have to laugh here because they have done a decent enough job of getting Mexico over as the babyface team and Canada over as the heels, because they got this redneck crowd, or at least some of them, to chant Mexico, Mexico. You know, much like that opening singles match, this match started slow, which again makes sense because it's the third time everyone is wrestling in about 75 minutes. So of course they'd be starting slow. Juvi and Teddy took turns trying to put their hands completely through the other person's chest. And then we got the spot I was kind of alluding to earlier. We had a very, very indie-rific spot here with the two best wrestlers on each side. We had Teddy. Teddy slipped off the top rope, which shit happens. Then he climbs back up and does a very indie-rific move to Juvi. It's one of those moves where they just fall down on top of each other.
It looked really, really bad.
Yeah. Later in the match, Evans crotched Juvi on the top rope, but Juvi recovered and pinned Evans with a middle rope Juvi driver, giving Mexico a 6-4 advantage. Now, they went 7-8 minutes without any eliminations and then did all the eliminations in the last 5 minutes, which, would have been better if they would have spread those out just a little bit here. Because seconds after that, Teddy tied it up by pinning Negro with a twisting moonsault. Juvi, okay, time for me to scream a little bit about shitty refereeing. Juvi sets up Teddy for a superplex, and they're on, a neutral corner. And Johnny Devine runs down the apron and taps Teddy's knee, which apparently counted as a tag, even though they were nowhere near the Canadian corner. And so Devine gets in there and turns it into a stacked up superplex and pinned Juvi, which should not have been allowed since that tag was incredibly suspect. However, it's okay because Aguila flew in with a top rope sunset flip and pinned Devine to tie it 8-8. Team Canada did a demolition decapitation to Aguila, but it culminated in a Teddy Hart shooting star press for the pin, putting Canada up 10-8, meaning right now it is Teddy Hart and Petey Williams versus Hector Garza. And in order to win it for Team Mexico, Hector Garza has to pin both Teddy Hart and Petey Williams. However, we could not just have one dumb refereeing moment of the show or of the match. We had to have two, because Garza gives Teddy a standing moonsault. Petey runs in and breaks it up at 2. I don't even think Mike Posey hit the mat for the third time. However, Mike Posey called it as a pin. He called it that Hector Garza pinned Teddy Hart, and Teddy Hart is eliminated. Which, because the finish went so fast, they didn't even really have time to get over what happened. They weren't going to show a replay because, again, it was fucked up. But it was like both captains were pinned. And they didn't even really get a chance to get over the fact that the Mexican captain was pinned and Hector Garza had to take on, multiple Canadians by himself. And then Garza hit the tornillo to PD to win and to retain the America's X Cup for the win for Team Mexico, despite some real suspect refereeing here. And then even though D'Amore was flipping his shit, we did have some sportsmanship here, as Teddy Hart did shake the hand of Juventud at the end of the match, thus bringing everything full circle. Because remember last week, when they all came out to confront each other, there was no sportsmanship. They got into an 8-way fight. And now that it's over, now that the better team has won, now everyone's like, okay, we accept you're the better team, and we shake hands and part friends. Now,
until the next time we face you, then we'll kick your ass.
This was not as good as last month, but at least we did not immediately have Jeff Jarrett storm out to make it all about him. Team Mexico wins. Mexico wins the America's X Cup 12-10. They did get a little bit of time to celebrate, which again was more than they did last month. And I gave this match a 7.5 out of 10.
I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was pretty good. I thought Teddy Hart screwed up the spot. I thought he was supposed to stay down because he did kick out at 2. Maybe it's my knowledge of how much of an asshole Teddy Hart really is. And, his reputation, I figured he probably just kicked out when it was probably planned that it was going to be 1, 2, 3. Or Mike Posey was told to, all right, we got to go home. And he probably didn't convey that to Teddy Hart and Garza or Petey or anybody. But Posey's okay as a referee, but at least he isn't Rudy Charles. And thus, I want to thank you for telling me that on SmackDown last Friday, Drew McIntyre headbutted him to oblivion.
Drew McIntyre gave him the Glasgow kiss.
If only Drew McIntyre could have kept the title.
Now, I do have some breaking news. Well, as breaking news as you can get in a show that's 22 years old. Not only is this Teddy Hart's last match and last show, it's also Hoovy's. And I don't want to get into detail because I need to go into the back into the future to remind myself. But I know there were a lot of issues with the booking of this match, specifically with Hoovy, because he really needed to be convinced to do the job in this match to set up for Hector Garza to come from behind to win. And he threw a little bit of a tantrum. And I believe that's why we will no longer have any Hoovy into the next one. And I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure who replaces him. We'll find out in a month. Because there will be another one. Yep. In fact, we'll then have a World X Cup in May. Doesn't that sound fun?
Actually does.
May is
figure out who that fourth team is going to be.
Isn't it? Well, April is England, and then England sucks so much, even more than the Canadians, that May is America, Canada, Mexico, and Japan.
I approve.
Yeah.
I think Jack Evans done after this show too.
I'm not going to look it up, but we'll see. I mean, either way, whatever it is, the Canadians aren't going to be back as in a team competition until May. So, and May, if I remember, has a whole shit ton of gimmick matches that month too. It's like that's when they debut the King of the Mountain match, the World X Cup as an Ultimate X match in it. And they do a couple other things on that show, or just or that month that is a bit cray-cray. So there was a lot of time left in this show, and I'll be honest, I was worried about what that meant because one match and a lot of time left, and that one match, we did not need that match going a lot of time. But here we get the hard plug for next week, and Don West apparently felt that he needed to eat up some minutes because he spent some minutes plugging everything. Plugging TNA, well, NWATNA.com, plugging TNA On Demand, plugging the merchandise you can buy on NWATNA.com. And hey, Don West is great at selling people stuff. So hey, if there's anybody out there that's going to, sell your merchandise, I'd have it be Don West. Isn't he the person that came up with the idea for those mystery bags, the brown bags that they used to sell?
Yep. That was his idea. I bought some of them.
Yeah. I bought two. I got a bunch of DVDs, and I got the Hulk Hogan T-shirt that they first put out of him, and one other shirt. I don't remember. Oh, I got the Suicide shirt. I love that shirt. I had that shirt forever.
When they did the liquidation sale, I bought 8 bags. got a ton of DVDs. And the trick for that is you buy like the Jeff Hardy coloring book. If you buy 2 bags, so you get free shipping. The hilarious thing is in one bag, I got this weird band, which is supposed to be like this kinetic band to help circulation. And I got the worst thing known to man.
What's that?
The dumbass Dixie Carter action figure.
Remember when she tried to make that she tried to trend that on Twitter, with people showing where the Dixie Carter action figure is and all this stupid shit. Yeah, they had a few leftovers, what we're saying.
I think
anyway,
I sold mine on eBay for like $15.
Nice. In addition to Jeff Jarrett versus Chris Harris for the NWA title, we're also going to get Abyss versus AJ Styles in a ladder match where the winner becomes the #1 contender for the NWA World Title. Maybe if AJ wins 2, #1 contenders matches or wins 2 title shots, he may actually get a title shot now. He still never got the one he got from that tag match back in January with him and Eric Watts versus Jeff Jarrett and somebody.
It was
before
Kid
you answer,
Kash.
it really doesn't matter. Yeah, it really didn't matter who it was.
No, they
but yeah.
called it they said you get a title shot, but it was a tag team title shot, and it was stupid then. It's stupid now. But you know what? AJ Styles Abyss ladder match. Let's go.
See, I would accept that, except like 2 weeks ago, AJ said that he still had a world title match that he was owed.
Probably the rematch from. No, wait, no, it couldn't be the rematch because he had that and he got fucked over by Kid Kash.
Yep. Scott Hudson was now with Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett said that Harris having 2 weeks of tough matches doesn't mean he's ready for Jarrett. Jarrett then tried to force Hudson to give his opinion of whether or not Harris was ready, and Hudson's only response was, "That's why we play the game." Again, why did we need that Vince Russo segment?
We didn't.
But yeah, because who needs a world title match to just be built up by the champion cuts a promo, the #1 contender cuts a promo, they're both fired up, and the big question is, can the challenger, who's used to doing nothing but tag matches, can he overcome that? Can he overcome the experience edge and win the world title next week? But yeah, we'll see next week what happens, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Main event: Glenn Gilbertti, Kid Kash, and David Young versus Violent J, Shaggy 2 Dope, and 2 Tough Tony with the Rude Boy in a Dark Carnival match. Okay, so all week long, all week is a real stretch of the imagination. But anytime I thought about this match in the past week, which I think was like 5 minutes before I started watching the show, I was wondering what the flying fuck a Dark Carnival match was and how it's going to be any different from any of the 8 million other street fights we see on this show. The answer is they hung up 4 poles around the ring. And not even good poles you could climb or anything. They're talking about like little skinny poles. And they hung chains from pole to pole. Now you might think, wait, I heard this is the Ravens Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. They're going to hang weapons all around those chains. They did no such thing. What they hung up around the chains, or on the chains around the ring, were a series of signs, not stop signs, or not like road signs you could use as a weapon, and then like the cardboard signs that fans bring to the arena. And these were all pro ICP signs too. And what ultimately was the point of this And I don't know, maybe the match was supposed to be something completely different, and so it wouldn't have completely distracted you if they were up. Because the first thing they did was Kash, Glenn Gilbertti, and Dave Young came out and ripped down all the signs and tore them up. What was the point of even being up there? And I noticed there were some weapons laying on the mat, and they kicked them out of the ring. I'm like, okay, so what is the point of the poles and the chains? There really isn't, because again, you couldn't do anything with it. It's not even like, oh, well, maybe like, Kid Kash, super athletic dude, maybe he could grab the chain and kind of like, swing on it a little bit or whatever. If he would have tried that, it would have fallen down and he would have fallen on his fucking head if he tried to swing off that thing.
Yep.
So those chains were just there to do something to make this match different. And it didn't need to be any different. Just say it was a stupid street fight, because the match began and it started as a wrestling match. And
yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
And, the whole point of having Glenn Gilbertti, Kid Kash, and David Young in this feud is that they're the three lowest level heels in the company, but they could also hold their own and carry the clowns to a decent match. And then one of the first spots of the match was Violent J running the ropes, which he sucks at, and did more to expose the business than anything Kenny Omega ever thought of doing in his life. After 3 or 4 minutes of that, they finally realized that if this match had any chance of being good, it was to turn into a crazy garbage match. So the heels threw all the weapons into the ring, and things went from here. The heels regrouped to the outside, and Tony allegedly did a corkscrew senton to Gilbertti and Young. I say allegedly because Gilbertti and Young stood far enough apart that Tony just crashed in between them.
I thought that was hilarious. He also did. Didn't he do like some sort? I mentioned he did a corkscrew plancha, but he did like some sort of moonsault or something later on in the match. And having seen Too Tough Tony nowadays, I want him to do these spots in a match, knowing that he will neck himself, because it would be the most hilarious thing he's done in the past 20 years.
So any hilarity you could get out of this match went away, because at random intervals throughout the match, the lights would suddenly go down and there'd be like 5 seconds of Insane Clown Posse music playing, and then it would stop and the lights would come back up and the match would continue. There was no rhyme or reason for this. They never really explained why. They just said, oh, this is what a Dark Carnival match is. What does that mean?
I have no idea. Look, I hated it when New Jack did it in ECW, and I hate it here. I also didn't like it when they had Anarchy in the Arena, where they would have like Wild Thing will play constantly, or I forget whose theme song played constantly recently for the last one, but
wasn't it Final Countdown? Because they made a comment about how this was costing too much money.
Yeah, Final Countdown. It was bad. Well, the music playing throughout, it was not great.
You better watch yourself, because I said that on Twitter and I got roasted for that. Because they did that a few weeks ago during an AEW match where Jack Perry's theme song played for half of it. And I said I hated it when New Jack did it, and I hate it now. And I'm like, oh, I bet you like it when Jey Uso does it. I'm like, first of all, I don't even fucking watch WWE. And secondly, like, I've never seen Jey Uso do that. And if he did, I'd rip on him too. I hate it when New Jack did it. I hate it now. Hated it, in the mid 2000s. Hated it in the mid 10s. Hated it in the mid 20s. I can hate multiple things at once.
And if we're still around in the mid 30s, we'll hate it then too.
You fucking people out there, why is there this fucking thing where it's like, you either have to be 100% behind AEW or 100% behind WWE? Guess what? I can dislike things on both shows equally. I don't know what I dislike and like about WWE because I don't fucking watch it. But the fact is, I don't fucking hate watch shit. If I wanted to hate watch shit, I'd be watching Raw every Monday. Because I'd hate that. I specifically stopped watching WWE because I was hating it. You motherfuckers. You know, not everybody has no fucking life. I watch fucking 25 hours of classic wrestling every week, it seems like. But it's like, I have a fucking life. Cindy has a fucking life. Trey has a fucking life. We're not just sitting
Right.
here hate watching shit for the hell of it.
Yeah, all of us have jobs. All of us have. We like to go out and do stuff on a Saturday or a Sunday. I mean, Aria sees a whole bunch of movies on Saturdays. I like to hang out with my friends and go do fun stuff. My partner Kat had a boxing expedition she was doing Saturday. She was nervous as hell because her hand was not in the best shape. But you know what I did? I supported her 100% doing that match. And then we went out for dinner afterwards. I don't know about Trey's personal life, but I'm pretty sure he enjoys hanging out with his friends. He's got other stuff that's going on in his life. Tribalism is fandom is the worst thing to happen to enjoying things. Like, it's either one thing can do no wrong or one thing can do no right, or I think this person is super hot and, that type of stuff. Look, if you hate something, explain it properly. But it's the number 3s in the world, and they drive me absolutely nuts. I dealt with them in the game show fandom. Thankfully, I don't have to I've dealt with them in the wrestling fandom. It's why I don't make YouTube videos anymore. Like, I do this podcast with you. We have a good time, and I go on with my day.
There you go.
So we get to the end of this match.
Back to the match. Oh, not even there yet. So Shaggy at one point holds up a chair in the ring, and Kid Kash more or less goes for a springboard flipping Van Daminator. But not only did he come up slightly short, Shaggy didn't even attempt to sell it, so he just hit Kid Kash with the chair. When suddenly, of all people in the world, a man in a New England Patriots jersey hit the ring. And it's like, who the fuck is this? And he turns to the camera, and it's the fucking alpha male Monty Brown. Has run to the ring to help the heels. And this is the first time we've seen Monty on this show since August of 2002, when Jerry Jarrett was cutting costs and Monty Brown wanted too much money to keep working. And he powerbombed Tony on a ladder, and Kid Kash pinned him with a frog splash. That was unexpected. Don't get me wrong, the right team won here, but I can't imagine anyone expected the heels to win here. And I gave this match the worst rating on the show, a 3.0 out of 10.
Okay. Now, remember how I told... Okay, behind this, pulling the curtain back a little bit, me and Aria do message each other about the match or about the shows. And I sent Aria this message, quote, "So I am doubling my grade of the main event because of the return." You said, "Good Lord." And I said, "You'll be fine with the score." I gave this match a 1.5. I gave this match a 1.5 out of 10 before the return. I saw the return happen. It's a 3 out of 10. Fine about the grade?
There we go. For once in the show, you picked the right grade. I give you that.
Thanks.
Anytime. And then the show ended with a brief video package building up Jeff Jarrett versus Chris Harris, which was the right thing to end the show on.
Yep.
But yeah, that does it for the America's X Cup. Next week we're back to the same old shit. It's just
Except
the
we
same
have 2 matches to look forward to.
Old shit, old shit. With the same booker and the same wrestlers, it's just the same old shit.
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 Jeff Jarrett is
All right.
king, and nothing is the same. And yeah.
Can't wait for Kurt Angle to piss off Vince McMahon. Um, Match quality 5.44. Overall enjoyment 7.0 out of 10. Why do they always include these random things in the X Cup shows? I mean, at least we didn't get Mad Mikey versus Laz on this show, which would have been difficult for many reasons. Like I guarantee having the ICP in a match didn't sell one extra pay-per-view, but it did bring the show down a notch. Future build 7.0 out of 10 because there were 2 minutes on this show where Chris Harris got to cut a promo and he made the best of it. It's too bad it took this long for him to cut one good promo, but hey, it's one more than we had up until last week.
Mm-hmm.
And while the show was not as good as America versus Mexico, the America's X Cup is a success and it makes people eager for the next time they do this. And that gives us an overall rating of a 6.48.
Damn. That's gotta be one of the highest TNA scores.
It's up there. It's up there. And you know what else this means? We have officially less than 6 months left of TNA weekly pay-per-views. September 8th is the last one. Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy is 1, 2, 6, 10, 15, 19, 23, 25 shows left. 26 shows left. Excuse me. I can't do 23 plus 3 apparently. And I'm just thinking like the random ass shit that we're gonna get, which includes it. Doesn't Ken Shamrock return? Like, doesn't Jeff Jarrett have a fucking stable of like Jeff Jarrett, Hernandez, Ken Shamrock, and one other person? That's like the most random ass fucking stable of all time. And this is before every other random ass Jeff Jarrett stable. Like, wait till we get to Jeff Jarrett and America's Most Wanted as a stable. Or, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash as the Kings of Wrestling.
At least that makes sense.
How does what make sense?
Hall, Nash, and Jarrett.
The best is they then try to. Do you remember they tried to recreate the Kevin Nash Rey Mysterio lawn dart spot?
I'm trying to remember with who.
That happens on an Impact in November. Do you want me to spoil it for you?
Yeah, because we're not covering it.
Amazing Red.
That actually makes sense.
Because he's small and Hispanic?
He's one of the smallest people in the company anyway, so it does track.
I would dare say the smallest. Remember when Amazing Red beat Samoa Joe for the X Division title like 2009? How absurd that was?
Yeah, but it looked like Amazing Red at least put on a little bit of muscle. I mean, he bulked up a little bit, probably gained like 5 pounds.
Yeah, he went from 130 pounds to 135 pounds. And Samoa Joe went from 260 to about 310 in the same period of time.
2009 was probably Samoa Joe's worst year in TNA. Look.
Was that when he got the knife? Right, yeah, that was when he had the knife. But then
the knife and the penis tattoo.
2010 was when he was abducted by ninjas.
Ninjas! Call the cops!
There are ninjas kidnapping people on TV. Then the best part of that too was that, like, the ninjas kidnap Samoa Joe, and then all get into a van and leave one of the ninjas behind, so the other ninja has to run after the van. Oh God.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was TNA 2010, ladies and gentlemen.
Russo as Booker in full. Russo as head writer in full force. Even though
So, yeah,
Hogan and Bischoff were there.
that's the shit that makes people go, "Hey, these are the good old days of TNA, 2004." You know. Meanwhile, what day was this? This was the 10th, right? Yeah. So this Sunday, Chris Benoit wins the world title in the main event of WrestleMania 20. Just to give you some context as to what else is happening in the world of wrestling right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to tap out now. We're going to call it a day. So that's going to do it for this week's show. I want to thank everyone for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Prepare to be pounced.